I installed the oil pump too, and since it's out of the vehicle, I can prime it anytime just by pouring that 60-40 mix of thick oil into the oil pickup hole before I put the tube on. And just as long as there's oil, and that thick stuff will stick to the gears enough to create suction and fill the pump up pretty quick. It's not an issue. If it was still in the vehicle, I would have turned the pump upside down and poured some of that 60-40 mix directly into the inlet and rotated the pump with my fingers till it started coming out the pressure port, and it would be lubricated and it'll take right off. That's not a problem. I'm moving forward with the lifter install. Roll the motor over on its side and take some brake cleaner and spray all these head bolt holes out again. And pull the paper towels out and take a shot back to the cylinders and the lifter bores and the head bolt holes again. And I'm going to degrease this deck one more time from touching it different times. Make sure any sticky places is off, especially between the cylinders. It wants to kind of have some tack once in a while. Find on the your finger should slide along, and then when it hangs up, you're into something that needs scrubbed off. I put some clean plain motor oil, 530 weight, into a white paint cap with no dirt particles in it, and I'm going to dip my perfectly clean finger into it and put it inside of each lifter or bore. Just lubricate the bore a little bit. Check the board, make sure there's no dirt in them, fill them with the oil or anything. If you get your fingers out of the bore, then wipe it off and start over. Piece of lint. Come off my band-aid, I think. With clean hands, check each one of the lifters for any damage. Like, I can feel that nick. And I'll take a piece of 400 grit, and anything sticking up, just work it back and forth lightly till it's not sticking up anymore. Just a hair to get that off of there. Because they've been handled rough. These lifters are already pumped up, so must have oil in them already. I'm going to go ahead and check them all out. Make sure your hands are lint and grit free if you're handling these things. The area of interest is the shiny area that's higher than the lower area. If there's any nicks or scratches that you can feel catching up and down, take a little piece of 400 grit and get it off of there. But in an up and down motion, light. All lifters have been checked and all lifters are pumped up, so there's no lint on them, no dirt, no residue, particularly around that oil hole. Once you stick these lifters in the oil, there will be a few air bubbles coming out of them, and let them finish. Give the wheel a couple spins. Any roughness, I would suggest replacing it with another one. I had one of them that had a little rough place in it, and that's just an accident waiting to happen. But the bubbles coming out was displacing air from around the needle bearings, and hopefully if there's any trash from the manufacturing process, the bubbles, the oil displacing the air will pack it out with it. But if it persists and the roller not rolling perfectly smooth, that one's probably going to cause a problem earlier than the other ones. Once it leaves a mark on on the drum or one of the rollers. It just keeps transferring until they're all pitted, and it's trying to hang the wheel up on that brand new cam, and that's going to be a problem. Oil hole orientation doesn't seem to be a factor. They're just in there random. I'm taking dip the lifter into a clean container of oil. Give the roller a little spin. And probably dip it again. And insert into the bore with the roller in line with the cam. Nice. Undo all on this side this way and install the lifter buckets to make sure they stay in line with some oil lining the inside of those. The lifter buckets are down, guides, whatever you want to call them, and they should be flush with this piece of metal underneath of them. If not, one of the lifters is out of alignment. I've degreased the hold down bolts. They're 2-stage, and I'm going to put a little blue Loctite down in the holes before I install them, because I didn't like how they come out of there before. And they torque to 106 inch-pounds. Pay attention to those buckets and make sure they're down flat and the hole centered with a threaded hole. I see a potential to bust one of them if it isn't down all the way and the hole's not centered with a threaded hole. And those are down. I'm going to do the other side just like this. I put a little splash of oil down in all the lifters on their tops. And I've rolled the motor over 2 full turns, so all the lifters should be up into their respectable holders. And I'm just going to check, taking a push rod and make sure they all drop back down. 1, except for the ones that's up on their lube, I guess. Yep, good enough. All the lifter buckets are down and in line with the lifters. We'll take brake cleaner, dry the deck off again. Scrub on it a little bit to make sure there's no oil residue on the decks. In preparation for putting the head gasket on it. All the bolt holes are clean and dry. All the lifters are installed and rolling on the cam. And make sure that the heads are the same temperature as the block when you're installing them, at least real close to one another. I'm finalizing the deck surface prep by degreasing it. Put some brake cleaner on a rag, relatively lint free, and scrub between cylinders and around each cylinder. These rings around the pistons are the most critical, and you end up trying to use a light colored rag, and you can see all the gray spots picking dirt up from the grooves in the block. machine into the block. And got to keep the brake cleaner flowing on it. Keep it really wet at all times. Just do it for 15-20 seconds, particularly in these Y's here. And when you go around each cylinder and your rag comes back with still white, not got any grit or silver to it, gray look, it's clean. As I say, these rings are the most critical. The water jackets are second critical. But between here and the water jacket, between here and each cylinder and any of these water jackets is super critical for cleanliness and flatness. And don't forget the head has water jackets. This is an outline of one here. And here's a water jacket coming out of the block, and I'm not sure if it's blocked off on the head or whether it goes through it. But clean all the grit from around the dowel pin holes. The block should have a silky smooth feel to it, dry. Keep the rag off of the gritty part to the very outside, or it'll drag it in on your clean surface. But as I say, and keep it off the lifter buckets. And don't forget about this strip up here. As I say, when you take your rag and run it over any part of the block and it comes back still white, it's done. Just mind that if you go inside the bore and catch the ridge still got carbon, then it'll drag carbon up on your rag. So stay on the flat parts as much as possible. And stay off of this outside border till last, or drag it away from the center part. And I say, when it comes back white, and not with these gray circles on it, you're done on this side. And I'll go ahead and insert these dowel pin spacers. Make sure they're fully seated down into the bottom. Just look at the depth and shove it down in there. Just take a piece of wood or something, tap it down, or just real easy with a hammer or something. It won't be too bad. And actually, probably what I'll do, before I put the dowel pins in, I'll shadow the block with a light. Hold the light sideways and look for scratches between cylinders, and just lightly feather them some if they're too significant. Holding the light along the side of it makes it show up, and also will show lint. Any lint on the surface or in these lifter buckets is not a good thing, or in the head bolt holes or squigglies hanging off the water jacket. There's a little bit of fuzz there. But holding the light sideways makes all the imperfections show up. And probably hit with a shop vac again. I see some lint down the cylinders. There's a piece of squiggly on the lifter bucket there. Another one. I'll probably run over with a shop vac. The end of the shop vac's clean. And just lightly degrease it one more time after touching it with a shop vac. And go ahead and insert the dowel pins if there's no imperfections found. Like I say, if there's, I'm going to keep the nicks between cylinders down to a minimum, and you can't remove very much material. Just a couple of scratches with that 800 scuff pad, and it's done. You can't deal with it anymore. You don't want to remove metal. Removing metal is worse than having a scratch in it, because I mean, that's what the scratch is, removed metal. But it can deal with some of it, but it sure can't deal with a bunch of it being removed, and so on and so forth. Dowel pins are installed, and I just put a couple of drops of that 60-40 mix of assembly lube I made into each cylinder. It'll like it. And I'll just get the pistons down where they're all not at the top. That's the best I could do. And just put touch a little bit of wool to the edge of the piston and let it pull up on the bottom. Not too much, or it'll run a possibility of tearing the engine up. And I went ahead and run a degreasing rag around all the cylinders just in case any of the oil happen to get on the deck. And I shadowed it again to make sure the lint's off of it. So it should be good to go. I want to break out the new head gasket and lay on it. The head gasket has front road on it. And of course I'm using a factory gasket. And it'll have a tab. On the right side the tab will point down to the right, and on the left side it'll point to the left, with front road on the head gasket pointing toward the front of the engine. Go ahead and look, make sure no oil or anything's got on the mating surfaces or in the head bolt holes, and should be getting close to making it happen. Make sure there's no debris around the rings or in the cylinders. Last chance. Last chance for inspection. It's too much work to take shortcuts now. Always handle the head gasket from one of the dowel pin holes to one of these less critical tabs up here. This has a tab pointing down on the right side. It has front road on it. And it also had a bunch of paper fiber debris I had to blow off of it from the packaging. Nice. And everything's a go. And grab the appropriate head. Offhand, heads really shouldn't be stored on their side like that. I don't have a problem with it because I know when I set the head down, I know one, the floor's clean, and I always set the head down from the back and then set the edge down on the floor slow, and it's not going to damage this machine edge. That's the ground strap on the front of the motor there. That's a stud for it. And if you haven't, these have been in the shop and got machined flat. The factory grind is really coarse. Now they're smooth. If you took them to the shop and you haven't done so, take an air hose and blow all the aluminum shavings out. Give it a little bath and brake cleaner, degrease it, the deck, and check it for lint, shadow it. As I said, I'm using brake cleaner and it's non-chlorinated, which is the best, and it flashes off within a few seconds, and it does leave behind little oxides and some nitrates or whatever, but it can be wiped off easily. And now I strongly recommend taking an air hose and blasting all these water jackets, the combustion chambers, spark plug holes, bolt holes, everything out for aluminum chips. I got a few out of the water jacket in particular. Sticking the air hose in every one of these holes and turning it all directions of the compass, so it'll break them chips loose if they're hanging off in there. And look in every one of the holes and make sure there's no aluminum shavings around the valves or in the water jackets. and check the edges for damage. There was just a little bit there. I took a razor blade with just a 64th of it sticking out and skinned the edge of the head there. And then I seen a defect there, skinned that down just a fraction. As long as you keep an 1/8 inch border around the perimeter of this, it'll be alright. I've seen looks like a casting flaw there. Like a little bubble in aluminum, and there's another one. And there's another one. There's just little casting flaws here and there, but fortunately that's a little sketchy, but you really just need a good 1/8 inch seal around the compression area to hold pretty good. And another thing, since this was machined in particular, all the holes are subject to catch lint if you're degreasing it with a rag of any type. So I'm going to shadow it, and there's some lint right there on the edge of the combustion chamber and that water jacket, and get all of that loose stuff off. And just take a light dusting of air with an air hose and not touch the deck anymore after it's degreased. Old dowel pin's kind of dug in there, didn't it? Be sure and line them bolt holes up when you set it down on there. You don't think that dragging a dowel pin across this deck leaves marks, but it does. And it can leave a mark in a serious place real fast. So take your time and line it up, and if nothing else, catch one dowel pin with one hole, and before you let the other side down, make sure the bolt holes are all lined up, and drop it down or the other side. I'm going to get a head bolt in it so nothing goes wrong, head falls off of it. I'm just putting just a hint of oil underneath the head of each of the big bolts. Not even enough to really tell it's on there. It's not pulling up or nothing. Just trace on there. Keeping oil off of the sealant / Loctite on the end of the bolt. That's nice. Starting to look like something again, I guess. I've installed all the head bolts, just none of them's touching the head except for the number 1. The long bolts, which is 1 through 10 only, will tighten down to 22 foot-pounds. And the second pass, 90-degree turn. And a third pass, 70-degree turn. And this order. After all that's said and done, go to the short bolts, the row on top, 5 of them, and alternate from the center out to 22 foot-pounds, bolts 11 through 15. This is number 1 and 2. I'm going to use an electronic torque wrench to set the foot-pounds and use it to degree. Starting with number 1. I'm pulling in a nice, smooth, continuous motion until I get an alarm. Now I got them all down to 22 foot-pounds. I'm going to give them a 90-degree turn. Just offhand, I put a black straight line pointing at 6 o'clock. We'll see if it goes to 9 o'clock, see how accurate this thing is. I mean, it should be pretty good. I mean, of course, you can hold a torque wrench off at about 3 o'clock, and it'll stop just past 6 o'clock. Just before 6 o'clock, I got a little past 3. There it is. I'll do the rest of them that way. Alright, got them all one pass, 90 degrees. Now I'll drop it down to 70 degrees. And 70 degrees for the 1 through 10 bolts. Bolts 1 through 10 have their final torque. Now do 11 through 15 to 22 foot-pounds. It's pretty much 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 to the back. And I'll be done with one head and do the other side just like it. They make a simple torque angle meter. It's just got a hook on it. You wedge it against something, set this to 0 and pull on the ratchet until it reads 90, and then reset it to the next one, head bolt, and then go back and then set it on 0 and go to 70. As long as you got this arm fixed and it doesn't move while you're turning it, the center will turn. This line will move and stop when it gets to the appropriate degrees. Starting to get buttoned back up. After the machining process, I'm going to put a drop of oil on the valve stems through the springs, just a drop. Let it spread around them, they'll be alright. Give them a little boost of lube. Mouse over the video and hit the circle I to continue to part 2 of the video.